evening and welcome once again to Fired Up, or good morning, wherever you happen to be hearing the show. My name is Bob Irwin. I am the host for Fired Up. I'll be the host for this show and normally the host. We're broadcasting our gun rights show from the law office of Alan Butel here in downtown Las Vegas. Alan, for his little commercial, handles criminal defense and civil litigation and is a frequent guest on Fired Up. This show is about guns, related politics, a lot of that coming up, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on YouTube. A new show is put up every Thursday. It will run live between 5 to 6 p.m. You can subscribe to it, and they will automatically forward that to your email if you go onto YouTube. The YouTube version is there 24/7, so if you miss the show, you can look it up. We are also rebroadcast on a lot of Nevada radio stations now on Saturday mornings between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. The main one is KELY, 12:30 a.m. It broadcasts out of Ely. You can pick that up on your computer also. Today's guest is California and Nevada defense attorney and general attorney.
Thank you.
Donald Green. Don, if you would, a bit of your background for anybody that hasn't seen you before.
Okay. Well, again, as always, Bob, it is quite an honor to be on your show once or twice a month. Again, my name is Don Green. You can find me at dongreenlaw.com. And the specific emphasis of our practice is criminal defense, gun issues, and business litigation. But as far as guns are concerned, that's everything from defending you in a gun-related crime, the use of the weapon, the inadvertent display of the weapon, the negligent display of the weapon, gun rights issues in perhaps clearing up a record or going to the FBI to explain or to correct an inaccurate record, and administrative proceedings concerning firearms. And we are at most of the gun shows, as we will be this weekend, and Bob will speak more of that towards the end of the show. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll have to add to that. Don and I have worked together for a long time now, and I am aware of numbers of cases that he has saved people a lot of grief simply by writing a letter to the agency and saying what you did to my client, usually in regulatory things, in denying a CCW or denying this or that or the other thing. And the letter straightens it out. It's amazing. He has a reputation. He fights with everybody. And sometimes the administration, the politicians, whoever they are, just don't want to get into the hassle. And they just say, okay, my computer is telling me it has updates it wants to do now. It always wants to do updates in the middle of the show. Mm-hmm. Anyway, we are a couple of notes here before we start. There's several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely covered by the mainstream media. So we always run a few of those on the show to kind of counterbalance everything they're doing on CNN, I guess, to me against CNN. I pick out cases to educate listeners. Some of them are good shootings, and some are questionable shootings, and once in a while there's just one that's just plain wrong. I have one tonight that is clearly just plain wrong. Fired Up is a nationwide show, worldwide actually. We use Nevada case examples, and when Don is here, we use frequently California case examples because we are broadcast all over California also. But that diagnosis might not apply in the state that you live in. If you're involved in a firearm crime, you're being charged with a crime or sued over a firearm issue, you need to contact local counsel in the jurisdiction you live in. The laws are different all over the country. So that being said, if you send an email in to me or Don, we can probably direct you to an attorney in the state you live in, who handles and is competent with firearms cases. But you need a specialist and you need a local attorney if you've got a problem. Remember, local law always prevails. What is a good shooting in Wyoming is a bad shooting in New York City, and vice versa. and so forth. What's a good shooting in Nevada is often a bad shooting in California.
Yes.
Next door neighbor. So here we go. Fox News TV 43 reported on the 10th of this month in Dauphin County, Pennsylvania. Police in Lower Paxton Township are investigating a home invasion in which the intruder was shot and killed by the homeowner. They responded to a hang-up call in the 2000 block of Fairway Lane for reports of a man beating another with a baseball bat in the driveway. While officers were responding, there was a report of a man attempting to break into another residence several houses down from the original call. When police arrived, they found the suspect inside the second residence with a gunshot wound to the abdomen. Police say the suspect forced his way into that home with a baseball bat and was met by the homeowner who shot him. The suspect was taken to a local hospital where he later died. When officers arrived at the first caller's residence, they found an elderly woman suffering from head trauma. She was taken to Hershey Medical Center. Her condition is unknown as of this report. Police are unsure how the elderly woman became injured, but believe that a domestic dispute occurred between a resident of the home and the suspect. That the suspect came to this first home looking for somebody else who wasn't there and took it out on this elderly woman. Police had a note in the story, there is no threat to public safety as a result of this incident. They believe this was not a random act and so forth. Apparently the intruder, my commentary now, the intruder attacked a woman in the first home, then found a second victim a few houses away and attacked that residence, getting himself shot dead. It will take some sorting out by investigators on the woman injured in the first home. The resident of the second home appears to be really on solid self-defense grounds. He had no idea who this guy was, and he comes in and threatens him with a bat. Clearly threat of great bodily harm and so forth. The only scary thing is this is in Pennsylvania. What do you think?
Well, Bob, I agree with you that we have two crime scenes here. They are related by the fact that the perpetrator was involved in both of them. We have two separate sets of victims. Now, the perpetrator is shot in the abdomen and dies of that wound at a later time. For your homeowners and your concealed carry permittees in whatever state you are, especially Nevada and California, the situation is not over until it's over. And in this case, the situation was fluid. We have what's going on in one house transfers over to another, and it's not over with the initial attack, with the attack on the elderly woman who has now got some kind of blunt force head trauma. Even if homeowner 2 did not know about what was going on with homeowner number 1, homeowner 2 was justified in Nevada and California with protecting himself and his home when presented with a perpetrator with a baseball bat. And this was a response to a hang-up call, and 99% of the time, the police are going to respond to a hang-up call when they call 911. So it was good that the police got there when it did. I didn't notice a time on here, but if it was at night, it's still homeowner 2 is protected. Even if it was during the day, homeowner 2 is protected.
Yeah, I searched for that because that's important to normally the stories like this of whether the guy could clearly see day or night or whatever. But in this case, of course, the guy broke into his house, so we'll presume he had lights in his house. But the time of day wasn't listed. The police are being not very forthcoming with this because they haven't been able to ascertain whether this guy is a mental patient or whatever that caused this. Why he decided to attack the second house. Of course, the second house guy, he has no knowledge of the first house, and here comes a guy crashing in with a baseball bat. Yes. So that's it. Yeah, clear self-defense, I think, in his case. WLOX TV 13.3 in Biloxi, Mississippi, and the Pecan Item, that's the name of this local paper, in Pearl River County, reported on 9/15, the Pearl River County Sheriff's Department is investigating the incident that ended in a fatal shooting Thursday night in the Henley Field community. chief deputy, his name is Shane Tucker, said it all happened at a home on Cary Bird Road around 8 p.m. The chief deputy said a 43-year-old from Popularville went to a home armed with a rifle and was angry with the homeowner. He added it is unclear what the angry man's intentions were, but there's a quote from the deputy chief, but it clearly wasn't anything good. Argument broke out between the angry man and the homeowner. The 43-year-old then pointed a rifle at the homeowner. Reacting to that, the homeowner reported fired one shot. The Pearl River coroner, his name is Derek Turnage, said the 43-year-old was shot in the abdomen. The subject died shortly thereafter. No other shots were fired, and there are no injuries reported to the homeowner. Tucker said it appears the shooting was in self-defense and the homeowner was not arrested or charged. The investigation is ongoing. The chief deputy said evidence will be presented to a grand jury. Apparently, the two men knew each other. I pulled multiple stories. This is a very small rural paper that covered this. And the television, 13.3, is a high-frequency thing you subscribe to. Anyway, they had some sort of ongoing dispute, undetermined. I have to agree with the deputy chief that whatever the interloper was mad about, going over the homeowner's property and pointing a rifle was not a solution. Even small towns in rural areas have small claims courts, they have debt collection firms and constables' offices. There are, if somebody, you have a dispute with somebody and we don't know what the dispute was over, it really doesn't matter. Going over the other guy's house with a rifle, you're wrong. Call a lawyer, a local lawyer. If you have a dispute with somebody, you're trying to collect money back. I mean, the police did not have any indication that this was a dispute over drugs. Right. They checked that out, which is, if it was a dispute over drugs, I wouldn't use the story. But, you know, this is not a drug culture thing. This is just two guys. And call a lawyer. I mean, going over to somebody's house with a rifle, you are wrong. There is no right way around this. So he got himself killed. Call a lawyer. I'm going to call one now. Don?
Thank you. Well, Bob, if I may make just a one or 2 points on this one. Sure. There's a couple of things going on right here. First, the homeowner, although he may have been in some kind of a dispute, had more than bare fear. There was actual, real, discernible, unadulterated fear of great bodily harm or death. So did he react right by shooting? In most jurisdictions, I would say yes. In Nevada, yes. Let's take this to California. There's an incident where the homeowner, this is recently reported, the homeowner was in his home and he heard some noise in his garage. As he opened the door, he could see that the door of the garage was being opened up. The homeowner laid down on the ground in back of his car, or at least where the front of the car is on the ground, and some kids came around. And what I mean by kids, possibly teenagers, not young, not adolescents, the homeowner fired from an angle from the ground at approximately 30 to 45 degrees, because that is the entryway, that is the entrance of the bullet and passing through the victim's body, who's dead. The homeowner is arrested and charged with murder. He's also charged with several other lesser included offenses and discharge of a firearm in a residential area. Now, it took his attorney, well, probably about 1.5 to 2 years until, now this is in around, I would say, about 100 miles east of Sacramento. And it took the judge said to the jury in the instructions that about the castle doctrine, which you can protect your, right, in the castle. And he had a version of stand your ground. Now, if the guy would have been found not guilty, I think that would have been an issue on appeal. But the judge pointed out that the suspect have the right to be where he was at that moment. The prosecution's theory is that he should have taken one more step and not fired. That is, what check to see if they're armed. But the jury didn't buy it. He was found not guilty. But it took him about 2 years. I just want to point that out. It's not exact, but it's close.
And the rest of his life to try and get over it.
Yes.
It's nobody wins gunfights. But yeah, the jurisdiction really matters. This is AL.com, Alabama, reporting on 9/16 of 2017 in Jefferson County, Alabama. County Sheriff's deputies were dispatched just before 10:30 p.m. on a report of a disturbance, so we know it was at dark. Once on the scenes, deputies found an adult male dead on the floor of the house. Information at the scene was that the male homeowner and a friend were in a side room of the home visiting. 2 armed men forced their way into the door and tried to rob them. The homeowner's friend began fighting with the suspects, physically fighting around with the suspects. The homeowner was struck in the head with a handgun. That would be one of the suspects. During the struggle, the shot was fired. One of the suspects was struck and fell to the floor. The second suspect fled to a waiting vehicle and it was driven away by a third, yet unknown suspect. The suspect vehicle is described as a full-size gray Ford pickup, if you happen to see one around Alabama somewhere. The wounded suspect was pronounced dead at the scene, has not been identified. He was carrying no identification with him at all. The homeowner was transported to the hospital with a cut to his head. Another example of an armed homeowner able to save himself and others from harm. Attempting to fight with 2 intruders is certainly not a safe defensive plan. He found out afterwards there was a third suspect outside, which frequently happens. There's, the rule is there are always more bad guys than you can see. Do not assume and focus in on one bad guy. They tend to work in small groups. The wife calling the cops while he defends the family gets all the sounds and statements on the 911 recorder at the police department. So if you're making a call, there's something going on, when you call 911, don't hang up. Just drop the phone and leave it off the hook. Because most of these systems now are sophisticated enough, they can pull up the volume and record clicking noises and steps and and you can tell a lot, and it sets an exact timeline. And of course, it has a recording of who said what and when. It has a recording of you saying, "Get out of my house," before the shot rather than after, that sort of thing. Again, it is another example of no honor among thieves. The second intruder and the getaway driver left their buddy to his fate. It seems this trio of bad guys simply picked the wrong house. This is in fairly rural Alabama. I don't expect the homeowner is going to have any problem with this. Of course, it will be reviewed by a grand jury to determine if the homeowner is liable in any way. But this one's pretty clean cut. Good shoot.
I agree with you. The point the idea that I would like to present here is that we notice that in the past 2 examples, except for the most immediate, these happen at night,
right.
And you're never going to know who's knocking on the door. And all of these have been people forcing themselves into the home. So added security, your locks, perhaps put something underneath the door. And depending on where you live, it appears as if some of these may have been in rural areas. But from a legal standpoint, if you're in California and this happened like this, especially with the fighting, are the police or the district attorney going to take a look to see if this was more than what meets the eye, such as a botched drug deal, or somebody's chasing somebody because they're sleeping with their wife or something like that. Yeah. So, but this one I'm going to follow up on this one.
Yeah, it seems reasonable to do that and see what happened. And if there is a follow-up on it that I happen to come across, I will update them, whenever show it comes up. I understand the update may be a year from now because of the speed of the judicial system. This is the really stupid shooting I have for, or stupid incident I have for tonight. This, I will also have to say, is a very narrow local paper and an AP report that followed up. This is on the 19th of this month in Elwood City, Pennsylvania. According to a criminal complaint on September 14, 5 days prior, officers were sent to a residence in Perry Township on a report an individual in physical custody by the homeowner, possession of 4 stolen shotguns. Upon arrival, the officers saw a 42-year-old from Newcastle lying on the ground being secured by the homeowner. The investigation revealed the suspect had stolen the firearms from the homeowner while he was staying at the residence off and on for a few weeks with the homeowner's daughter. The homeowner suspected the 42-year-old was the thief and had asked him to return the guns, but the suspect claimed he didn't know anything about the guns at all. Eventually, the suspect stated he had found the guns and that they were given to a Newcastle drug dealer in exchange for $350 worth of narcotics. The criminal also claimed he had told the drug dealer that he had to get the firearms back to the rightful owner and offered him $200 for the guns. So the 42-year-old drove the stolen guns back to the victim's home. The victim took one of the stolen guns out of the trunk, loaded a chamber, maybe it's a double barrel gun, he loaded one of the chambers, what they mean, loaded a chamber into it, that was the reporter, and told the thief to get on the ground while they waited for police. The burglar then changed his story again, stating he had stolen the shotguns during the middle of the night when the daughter and the homeowner were sleeping, and the firearms remained in his trunk the entire time. He admitted he stole the shotguns to try and sell them, but did not have any luck finding a buyer. Investigating officers discovered the 42-year-old had prior convictions for robbery, burglary, firearms not to be carried without license, which would make him a prohibited person, so he couldn't control or possess firearms. He's now facing felony theft, receiving stolen property, and person not to possess, use, control, or sell, or transfer firearms. This is just the guy you want dating your daughter. If any of you follow up on this story from Elwood, Pennsylvania, you will discover I did find a second source that was very brief, but the bad guy is either 41 or 42 years old, depending on whose version you're reading. But just a good story. The homeowner didn't shoot him, but the bad guy, this has got to be possibly the dumbest criminal I've written about this particular year. And we're late in the year.
Pretty much. I want to take an opposite standpoint, if I may.
Okay.
Let's transfer this case from Elwood City, California, to Westwood, which is near Beverly Hills. It's where University of California, Los Angeles is, in the west end of Los Angeles near Century City.
He's going to prison.
The homeowner. Here's the legal issue. May I retrieve a stolen firearm, even if it's mine, load around in the chamber or a shell, and then use it to hold a suspect awaiting the police when there's a trunk full of my shotguns in the vehicle driven by the perpetrator?
It would seem almost anywhere, but where you just mentioned.
Exactly. So, and if I'm going to use deadly force, where was the deadly force? When was the deadly force presented by the perpetrator?
Yeah.
Did I need to use obvious deadly force? Could I have just used the shotgun as a battering instrument rather than load it? I think that if we transfer this case to California, and especially San Francisco County, Los Angeles County, San Diego County, we may have 2 people in custody.
Yeah. Well, I agree. As we started with the show, jurisdiction really matters. And the guy next to me is so familiar with that because we have Nevada cases that are fine shootings, and if they cross the border, They're not.
Mhm.
And the way the politics are going in Nevada, hopefully we won't turn into East California in the next election that's coming up. But I can't imagine. And also, Don, if I was the prosecutor, I would bring up that the homeowner, in this case, was pointing the gun. All the guy said was, he needed $200 to pay the drug dealer back.
Right.
Could have given the guy $200. He's there to bring the gun back. I recognize his wanting to make a citizen's arrest, and I think it's because this slimeball is dating his daughter, or living with his daughter, whatever, and that's another dynamic that enters into here. Is he madder at him over the daughter, or madder at him over the 4 shotguns? I would presume it's over the daughter, leading his daughter astray, but maybe the daughter led him astray. This is, don't do that. If the guy's coming to bring you back your stolen property, just take it back. No matter what jurisdiction you're in. You don't want to get involved in one of these things if you don't have to. This is one of the this is a robbery case. It's from Omaha, Nebraska, also on the 19th. KETV7, that's the ABC affiliate in Omaha. Said on a Monday night, investigators took over the area, focused on the corner of 41st Street and the Bazaar Glass Tobacco and Accessories store. It's a head shop, apparently. About 11 o'clock, I suppose, a witness said, I heard a loud noise, said a witness who lives in the same building as the tobacco shop. Police said an employee of the tobacco shop told them he shot at 2 males who were trying to rob the store. One suspect got away. The other, an 18-year-old, died at the hospital. Police have not said whether any weapons were recovered. The deceased's mother, interviewed by the press, of course, said her son was at home just 2 hours before the gunfire. He was the youngest of 4 children. She said the deceased suspect, a former Omaha South and Bryan High School student, worked in masonry, had everything he needed, so friends can imagine why he would end up in this deadly situation. The second suspect is still on the run, so many in the area are staying alert. I was kind of worried that maybe he could still be in the neighborhood, said another resident. He could have broken into anybody's house. Police have not released the names of the employee who pulled the trigger. No word yet on whether he will face charges. Again, the grand jury is going to review that. Omaha police are still looking for the second suspect, who initially reported as male, wearing a light-colored hoodie and a bandana. That'll help. The officers ask anyone with information to contact Omaha Crime Stoppers. The tobacco shop owner and the building owner have not returned KETV's calls for comment. Smart. This comment here, this is another head shop robbery where an armed employee shoots in apparent self-defense. Police have released no information at all as to whether the would-be robbers were actually armed. The victim, if the victim waits to find out during the incident, of course, he could find out by a bullet striking him. Here you have guys with masks coming in, and as they enter, he fires. Apparently, they were inside the store. The clerk has a few split seconds to make the decision. He decided to save his own life. The smartest thing the shop and the shooter did was not respond to the press. That can never be helpful to you. No, they wouldn't interview. That's why they interviewed the guy's mother. She went on in some detail about, he had all these things going for him. He's a star athlete and so on and so on. He didn't need to be doing this. Well, really most robbers don't need to be doing it for one reason or another. We're getting a lot of criminals who do it just for the fun of it, for the adrenaline rush, for whatever. She suggested in one of her several interviews maybe he was forced into it because he owed somebody else money. But that's just hypothetical. He never talked to his mother about that. He was doing fine as far as she knew. He had a job in masonry and so forth. And we don't know. But the point of our coverage here is what is an apparent robbery, crashing in the door. The guy has a split second to make a decision. The police have weeks and weeks and weeks to look at. We'll presume there's videotape and so forth. They haven't released any of that yet. But I can't imagine a head shop that, or a tobacco shop, excuse me, a tobacco and glassware shop
accessories
doesn't have, there was a picture of the store on the internet. It's a head shop, my opinion. There's going to be videotape, of course, and the cameras may not be visible, but they're there. So we'll find out when the police get all the information. Again, we'll do a follow-up if we can. Again, this is KETV7 ABC in Omaha, Nebraska.
For your viewers and listeners in Nevada in particular, for 80 days now, marijuana has been legal for personal consumption under certain amounts in your home, not in the hotels, not in parks. And as to these places which sell legal marijuana, let's forget about the medicinal marijuana right now, but the stores which have opened up in the past 80 days, which do sell the small amounts of marijuana to allegedly responsible adults, it is not a question of if these stores are going to be robbed at gunpoint or something similar. It's when.
Exactly.
There is a case, I'm not sure how far we can discuss this on the air. There's a strikingly similar case ongoing in Nevada right now in our district courts, in which the worker at one of these places is accused of murder of a suspect. So every detail has to be analyzed in a case like this, and I think that because this is a tobacco shop and it sells glassware and accessories, in our jurisdiction in Nevada, I think that these places are going to receive a tremendous amount of scrutiny by the police and the district attorney if there is a shooting or some other incident in which a firearm is used by one or more employees, and possible federal intervention, because the federal law still prohibits the use and carrying and possession of a firearm in connection with any drug-related crime. The possession of marijuana, although legal in Nevada, is a federal crime. And if you are an owner of a shop and you're carrying, or your employees are carrying, do they not have actual or constructive possession of the marijuana, which would lead to possible criminal? They might get away with shooting somebody in self-defense, but they might be prosecuted for the carrying of the firearm during and in relation to a drug-related crime, to wit, a violation of Title 21 of the United States Code.
The Nevada case Don is alluding to, I'm quite familiar with, and I really am not free to discuss it on the air. However, the Nevada case took place before Nevada legalized marijuana, so the head shop in that case was not involved in marijuana, only in selling marijuana accessories. So there was no marijuana on the premise. But the basic similarities to the case are pretty much the same. And when that case goes to trial, which is October 2nd, I will hopefully be free to entertain the viewers with what really happened as opposed to the press reports. WSB TV2 and U.S. News and World Report both reported in Atlanta, Georgia on the 20th. It just happened. Police say they responded to a call of shots fired in the area of Wisteria Way. When officers arrived, they found a man shot. The victim stated he was a Chinese food delivery driver, and he received an order to what is now apparently a vacant house on the corner where the shooting took place. The driver told them he pulled up to the house to make the delivery. Two women approached him outside in the driveway, apparently, and started asking about the order and so forth. as he was speaking to the women, getting the food out, two males walked up behind him and shot him in the back. They didn't. There was no really attempted robbery in this. They just walked up while the women distracted the guy and fired. Turned out the driver also had a gun, and gunfire was exchanged between the shooter and the victim here. Although the victim was shot in the back, he was able to return fire at the suspects, hit one of the men in the leg, according to responding officers. Investigators say the suspects ran, but they found one man hiding out nearby. The officers arrested that wounded man. He had been shot in the leg and taken to Grady Memorial Hospital, as was the delivery driver, to the same hospital. Both were in surgery overnight, and their conditions were not reported. Brian Schiffbauer with the Atlanta Police Department said investigators say they called for a delivery order and tried to ambush the driver when he showed up with the food. Police are searching for the other man and two women. They say lured the delivery driver into a vacant house, and shot him. Not unusual for delivery drivers to be shot at or to be robbed. In this case, it's an attempted murder. The males didn't say anything to him, like drop those egg rolls or give me your money. They simply fired. The one fired. He was able to return fire and so forth, but and hit one of the guys who was captured because he hit the guy in the leg. So we'll presume his injuries aren't life-threatening, but that depends on where it is in the leg. This is a murder with the cover of a shooting a delivery driver. I am flabbergasted with their thinking, the bad guys thinking, the risk and reward versus reward just doesn't make sense in this case. This driver is going to have maybe a couple $100, probably not that much.
Probably not that much.
And they do what they attempted a murder for an unknown reward that's going to max out at a couple $100. If this driver had not been armed, clearly he'd be dead because there was an exchange of gunfire and he hit the guy, and that guy ran off and was captured. The guy, he's a hero. He had the courage to continue the fight even though he was wounded. And lots of people, and we've viewed lots of gunfights over the years, when they're hit, they simply stop. And they place themselves at the mercy of the aggressor. And this guy's reaction was, so I'm shot. Boom. I'm going to shoot back. And he saved his own life. More power to him. And I'm glad he was delivering Chinese food instead of a pizza, because that would have been just even way more complicated. We'll assume the Chinese restaurant or whatever knew he was carrying a gun or didn't ask. But anyway, the problem here is the bad guys. The street thugs will murder you for absolutely nothing.
That is correct.
They logically think we're going to make a couple $100 and all four of us could get the death penalty?
They don't.
If they have one in Georgia.
Yeah, they do.
I presume they do. Yeah.
But they don't, Bob. They don't think like that. But for your
impossible,
right? For your listeners, especially your CCW carriers, and those who are permitted by their employers, or the employers who know that the employees are carrying legal weapons, training, I say, would probably save this driver's life. What does training have to do with the legal consequences of a shooting? Just about everything. Because the victim driver had, as you point out, the presence of mind to defend himself, not the money, not the food, but to defend himself because he had already been shot. One of the questions that I would ask, suppose that you've got a DA in California who said that, and there are striking examples of this, and the social media, Twitter, this Facebook, this Instagram, are full of situations every single day where people are saying, why did he have to shoot? Why couldn't he have just given the money away? Well, in California, suppose, for example, that we had one of those more liberal deputy district attorneys wants to make a name for himself or herself. And although California doesn't use the grand jury, let's just say that they do. They don't use it a lot. One of the questions, one of the letters I would write to the district attorney's office, if I may state, would be, I want you to ask my guy who I'm allowing to go to the grand jury, because although I can go to the grand jury with him, I can't ask a single question. I cannot cross-examine a single witness. All my guy can either answer, or he can say, I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may tend to incriminate me. But I would ask the district attorney to ask my client in front of the 23 plus or minus grand jurors, what training did you have in addition to your CCW training? What do you know about situational awareness? What did you know about this neighborhood? Did you know these people? To show that my guy had no reason to believe that he was going into any bad area, and he wasn't going into 118th Street in Compton near the LA Coliseum at 3:30 in the morning to deliver Chinese food, because you know you're going into a bad area of town. So the training has everything to do with it, because these are going to be some of the very first questions I'm going to ask you on the stand in front of that jury, or which I'm going to ask the district attorney to ask of you before the grand jury, and you better be ready to answer that question.
Yep. It's, again, as we addressed at the beginning, the jurisdiction makes a huge difference. And this guy, I would presume that that's it for him, and he's probably going to get a different job in the future. The tips are really good for delivery drivers. That's why they do it. But once in a while, and imagine if he takes the other tack and he says, well, I don't want to deliver there because that's a bad neighborhood. Then he gets sued over that, right? So this is a little bit different. I do a little background on this story. The Wall Street Journal and NBC did a poll recently of Americans, and the survey asked 1,200 adults and covered a range of issues. They were asked about the importance of issues when they go to vote. Do you vote on, what issue do you vote on? It doesn't ask their opinion of the issue, but it asked their opinion of if that issue affected their vote. And of course, the issues that were the top with most everybody was foreign policy, national defense, and the economy. That's kind of with Korea going on and so on and so on. But filling out the top 10 of issues that are really important to them when they vote for a politician. These 1,200 people, now it didn't ask them what side of the issue they were on, it just asked whether, so this doesn't tell you whether it's because they're for or against, it just tells you that's an issue that I listen to what the politicians say. Number 10 on the list was gay rights. Only 10% of the people asked cared one way or the other about gay rights as an issue in the election. 12% cared about gender equality issues, women's rights, basically. 15% said their vote would be affected by the politicians' views on religious issues and issues of faith. Legalization of drugs or penalties regarding those also was 15% of the population, said that's an important issue to them. Abortion was 17% said that's an issue for them. Again, not that, whether they were for abortions or wanted to stop abortions, just 17% said they would consider that with politicians they're voting for. Now we get some bigger numbers. Immigration, 28% of the people said they'd care about that. We've seen the demonstrations and so forth. And did you watch Nancy Pelosi getting yelled at by her own hecklers?
I heard about it, and
I laughed for 10 minutes.
I heard about it, yes.
Environmental issues, 30% of the people said they would consider their candidates' positions on the environment. We know that. We've seen a lot of demonstrations on that. And the top of the list of these 7 minor issues is gun rights or gun control. More people are going to vote for or against a politician than are going to vote for or against a politician on environment, immigration, abortion, legalization of drugs, religious issues, gender identity, and gay rights. Gun control as a secondary issue, 35% of those polled said they're going to use that. Now, from my position of listening to people that agree with me, I think they're a large voting bloc.
That's 100% of those people, yes.
They're the gun people that I deal with all day that's a huge issue. If you don't have a right to have a gun, you don't have the right to defend yourself and the criminals on the world. I think they're going to be more solid voters than the people who are anti-gun.
Yes.
My opinion. The poll didn't ask that. Again, they only asked, is this issue important to you? But 35% of the people polled said it is a huge issue to them. So politicians, bear in mind, support the NRA, support the gun rights groups, and go speak in front of them and so forth, because it matters. It's going to matter in the election, big time.
Yes.
What do you think?
I agree with your assessment that it is going to affect the election. I agree with this Wall Street Journal poll. I think that it probably shocked the NBC component of the poll takers, rather than the Wall Street Journal. But if I may go in a different direction, but similarly, the Supreme Court will meet in a couple of weeks on the first Monday in October. On this docket is the Maryland assault ban case.
Right.
About 30 days ago, Adam Laxalt joined in with 21 other states in the brief filed by the state of Alabama in opposition to the assault ban case. Maryland, the Circuit Court of Appeals in Maryland ruled that Maryland's assault ban was constitutional, and of course now it's being challenged in the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, what's significant about that brief joined by Adam Laxalt is that last year at this time, Adam Laxalt joined for Nevada in the case called Grace and Pink Pistols versus the city of the District of Columbia. Now, only about within the past 45 days to 60 days, the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia ruled unanimously that the DC's ban, or a general ban on concealed carry, with the component of the person having to demonstrate good cause, was in violation of the Second Amendment. Now, we have to look at, yes, DC Circuit and Washington, D.C., it is a different jurisdiction. Yeah. And the Second Amendment directly applies in Washington, D.C., because it is the District of Columbia. It has its own federal courts. It has its own federal, it is its own circuit, the right. D.C. Circuit. It's not like the 10th Circuit or the 11th Circuit. It is its own circuit. But Adam Laxalt joined in the Grace case from last year, in which the D.C. Circuit has now ruled against the District of Columbia. Now the District of Columbia has requested the full DC circuit, which is packed with Obama appointees, to review the decision on the grounds that we and the District of Columbia are different because we have to worry about diplomats and politicians. But notice, and this is for your viewers, this is a distinction, and this is a criticism of the attorneys for the District of Columbia. The issue before the District of Columbia Circuit was not whether this is a valid exercise of regulation by asking the question or for you to establish good cause. That was what was at issue at the District of Columbia in the district court, which ruled in favor of Mr. Grace and Think Pistols. And that was what it was at issue before the panel in the District of Columbia Circuit. What the District of Columbia wants to do now is change the issue to not whether good cause should be shown, but we're different because we have to protect politicians and diplomats. You can see how they're changing the message, and they're changing the message identical to how they're changing the message throughout the mainstream media of how everything is now different, and they want to make it different. And they're doing the same thing they did to Peruta in San Diego. Now remember, in Peruta won. And then it got appealed to the Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit ruled in favor of Peruta until the state of California, with Kamala Harris, who is now a senator from California, went to the full Ninth Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit reversed the earlier decision and ruled against Peruta. And now the U.S. Supreme Court in June denied review with a strong dissent by Justice Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch. Now, what they're trying to do, again, is change the message. But our Adam Laxalt has been so far joining in on these pro-gun briefs, unlike Catherine Cortez Masto, our former Attorney General, who not once did she ever join a brief in favor of gun rights, which was presented to the U.S. Supreme Court. And now she's representing the state of Nevada with Dean Heller as one of our two senators.
Yep.
This is how important this issue, as you pointed out a moment ago,
it's huge.
Is huge. Not, I think that the two most significant questions, actually the three most significant points for the U.S. Supreme Court, other than Trump's immigration ban, is the Second Amendment and the possibility of further appointments to the Supreme Court by the President of the United States.
If you are not registered to vote, register.
Vote your conscience, but vote, but register.
Have to. We got about 7 minutes, Don, so I can't.
I apologize.
I can't. Well, that's all right. You know, you're on here to rant. You know,
Oh, okay.
what you do. You know. John Huck has nothing on you.
Oh, thank you.
The two California bills affecting firearms retailers are headed to Governor Jerry Brown's desk as we speak. The main one is SB 464. It creates government standards for retailers, requiring them how to secure firearms when their business is closed. One would think, who cares? But what they're requiring is video cameras everywhere, safes, bolsters in front so people can't drive in, and so forth and so on. Which they're in the shopping center that won't let them put bolsters. Then they're, you know, they pick which law they're in violation of. Who inspects? The inspection police are who, and on and on and on. It's a long thing, and we'll touch on it next time Don is on. But by then, we're going to know whether it's law in California because it's on the governor's desk right now. But reading through all of the stuff that it requires dealers do as far as cameras and safes and alarms, and all gun dealers have cameras and safes and alarms, you know. So I view this as kind of harassment of rural dealers, which is what it amounts to. But anyway, it says in the print in this 14 or 15 pages. The licensing authority of an unincorporated area of a county or within the city may impose security requirements that are more strict or at a higher standard than those specified. Meaning it validates whatever restrictions exist. This started over you couldn't have a gun shop within 1,000 feet of a school or another gun shop or a religious or a, until you got into areas in cities where there was no possible place to put a gun shop because it couldn't be 1,000 feet from all those places. And now it validates when the governor signs it over there, Governor Moonbeam, that those stores literally have to close. Now it goes into effect in 2018, so they have a time to move.
Yes.
And which will probably make it constitutional. But if you live in California, support your local gun shop. Go buy something. 4 minutes. The Great Las Vegas Gun Show, September 23 and 24 at Cashman Field. They're still running shows there, despite the rumors to the contrary. I'll be there. Don will be there with a table. Hopefully, we'll be near each other. I would suggest you come down to the show if you need to ask a question about something you don't want to write in on the air to ask. Crossroads of the West will be there October 21 and 22. And we'll both be there, same thing. And Claude Hall's Las Vegas Gun Show, November 11 and 12. There's a lot of little shows in between throughout the state that I didn't get time to put in the outline, but I'm going to start doing those next week because there's shows in Amorosa Valley and Reno and here and so forth that now that we're on radio in all those areas, I need to cover. We are on YouTube, Fired Up with Bob Irwin, Thursdays from 5 to 6 p.m. My computer guys tell me that we can't use the Fired Up with Bob Irwin as a website because of some goofy thing that I don't pretend to understand. If you're a geek, give me a call. My number's up there. Leave a message. I'll call you back. But anyway, the radio is now, we can't use that, so these signs are going to get changed tomorrow or the next day or whenever I get to it. For the next broadcast, it'll just say Fired Up with Bob. Next week, we have murder defense specialist attorney Clark Patrick and likely his boss on the same show.
Randy Pike?
Yeah, we're going to have special public defender and special public defender's boss.
There you go.
I love Randy Pike. Randy Pike is, I said something to Clark one day about, he used to sit at pro tem where I was a bailiff in Boulder City, and we always would bring extra handcuffs. Because if you said to Randy Pike, he said, "Why didn't you go to DUI school? Today was your time." And he said, "I didn't have time." He said, "I can take care of that. They teach it in jail." Off you go. Anyway, we'll have Clark Patrick and hopefully Randy with us next. Radio show is on Saturday at 9 a.m. KELY 12:30 a.m. You can pull it up on the internet anywhere in the world. It's all streamed live. Thank you for watching Fired Up. Questions or comments to that Bob at Fired Up mail, which now works. One in a row. Anything else, Don?
No, you can go to Fired Up. You can go to Google and put Fired Up with Bob Irwin and it comes up.
I know, but it can't. That website does not exist. They can't explain it to me, and I know it comes up, and we can modify it.
So when I do that, is the YouTube coming up, not the website? Is that where it is?
The old website is coming up. It's still out there.
I see.
Whoever was running it didn't actually shut it down. They just went away.
Okay.
So it's there, and we can still modify it. And I don't understand. What I know about computers, you could put in your hat. So anyway, we are done. I wish you a great weekend, and we're all going to go home and watch Thursday Night Football. Thank you so much for listening to Fired Up. I do appreciate your support. Again, send me an email if you want a gun show pass for the Cashman Show on the 21 and 22nd. Have a bunch of those. If you'd like one of the books that I have, these are $10 postpaid. Send me an email and $10, and I will send you a book. Thanks for listening, Don.
Thank you again, as always.
Good night, y'all.